Welcome to the 400th episode of Boom and Bust. As always, I'm Tony Clement, your host, and I'm here at the News Forum where all voices matter. Thanks to all my loyal viewers over the years. Back in August, President Joe Biden signed an executive order allowing the U.S. Treasury Department to review and block outbound private sector investment in China, Iran, and other countries in key critical industries. Here to discuss this and the wider context is Elaine Dzenski. She is the Senior Director and Head of the Center on Economic and Financial Power at the Foundation for Defensive Democracies in Washington, D.C. Welcome to the program.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
So I guess first, what was the status quo situation prior to the executive order?
Well, prior to the executive order, which came out just a couple months ago, there was really no infrastructure in place around tracking outbound investment into authoritarian regimes like China. We really didn't have a way to look at how U.S. or more broadly Western capital was going into specific areas that may have national security implications. So what we have now with this outbound investment executive order and a forthcoming regulation from the U.S. Treasury is really a new tool in what I would call economic warfare. So, we've had so much focus on the use of sanctions and export controls, particularly as they relate to Russia, and of course, some actions with regard to China. But that tool set of sanctions and export controls and monitoring inbound investment, which we've done actually for many years in the US, now is looking a little bit larger. This growth to move towards outbound investment is really an indication of where we are in terms of the US-China strategic competition and the real concern that U.S. investment dollars are flowing into technologies and capabilities and support that may embolden the Chinese military. And so that's really the focus, to try to get at that concern.
Yeah, and I'm going to unpack that as the show goes along, but let me express my surprise. Perhaps you are surprised too, that this wasn't happening already, that the outbound investment that could enhance rather than degrade military capability of potential adversaries of the United States, that wasn't a concern before this executive order. It sounds a bit bizarre to me.
Well, you have a point, because we've certainly known for years that the Chinese have been appropriating intellectual property, sensitive intellectual property in some cases, that they've been working through some pretty coercive methods to build up their own military and industrial complex and the capabilities associated with that. So in some ways, it is surprising that we haven't moved more quickly. On the other hand, we have a different approach in the US, and I think certainly in Canada, around industrial policy and what it means to put these kinds of mechanisms in place, because it's not without some restriction in terms of how capital might flow in the future. And that certainly runs counter to the idea of open markets and a free flow of capital, outside of this country. So it is quite a shift. And it's not without some concern coming from private investors, other parts of the investment community, who are wondering exactly how this is going to impact their portfolios. So I think it's something that we need to take step by step. But as you say, it's an obvious next step.
Yeah. So there is some concern from the investment community. Probably just on the modalities of it, like, how do you decide whether something is of strategic importance, because there's a lot of dual use out there, right?
Exactly. That's really the crux of it. So the question will be around enforcement. How will the Department of Treasury take enforcement activity to the private and broader investor community around this proposed new rule? And that's something that we just don't know quite yet. What are the reporting requirements of investors if they think that their proposed investment may be covered under a new restriction? What does that implicate in terms of legacy engagement with with portfolios that are tied into places like China. So there
Sure.
are definitely questions that need to be answered, and I think it will take some time
Right.
to sort that out, just like it does with the imposition of new
Sure.
sanctions or export controls.